Okay, so the structure of the course will be as follows. We will run 3 sessions today, next week, and the following week. Over the 3 sessions, I will cover between 1 to 2 question papers with you. The ultimate plan is that together we cover 3 papers. So whatever I cover within the class, you will have to, you're going to be covering as the other part you'll be covering as homework. So the idea is to cover about 1 to 2. We most likely get to 1.5 papers. The other 1.5 papers you will be covering. So after today's lesson, when I send out all the recordings, I will, what will happen is I will, how can I say, I will also share with you the question I need you to do as part of your revision. The way we're going to go through the paper, I'm going to spend a bit of time on each question, but there's various things that need to take place other than just studying. There is some exam techniques I'll share with you and so forth. What's also very important is that as I go through the scenario, right, we will try to bring out important aspects, but I'm not going to do a high-level summary at the beginning. As we do the question, I will do the summary, okay? Just to give you some how to tackle an exam. It is not just about knowing the content. Obviously, there's 2 important aspects, knowing the content, but also being able to work under exam pressure. Now, my focus is not going to be exam pressure. That is where you can have to come in. When you do your own practice, you need to do under exam time. Okay, so within the 3 hours. But you don't want to, so there's a strategy that you can use. So the ones, a strategy that is quite useful is as follows. You set up your environment as if you are in an exam scenario. So that means no cell phone, no notes, nothing like that. Okay, so remember, there's whatever the exam scenario would be, you will set up like that. Then you will write whether you're gonna do it online or within as in whether you're gonna use Excel or whether you're going to use whether you're gonna write. So you must decide. Remember, this is the revision program. So you are preparing for your exam. Whatever you're going to be doing on the exam day is what you need to do when you practice. Don't practice using path A, then when it comes to the exam, you're going to be using path B. The great sports stars, when they practice exactly how they're going to be, what they're going to be doing on the day of the big match. They don't practice one way and play in the game another way. That's the great stars. Okay, so if you want to, so we can take lessons from that, emulate what they do, and just you not use it in sports, but use it in how we practice for the exam. So what is the strategy? So let's say you are writing. Okay, you can do the same thing if you're doing it online as well. When I say online, I'm meaning like via Excel or Word or something. Write within your 3 hours. So you must write your exam in one color. So let's say you're going to use blue to write your exam in the first 3 hours. When the 3 hours is over and you're not yet done, don't stop. Just switch the color of your pen, right? Or make it very clear, like maybe use black or whatever you want to use, but then switch the color of your pen and continue writing until you feel you are done, okay? Then you mark the entire paper. When you count the marks, there's going to be 2 marks that you're going to come up with. The one is the marks for the entire paper, and the second is the marks just for the first 3 hours. So let's say the blue writing. Then you can see how you did in the exam. If the total marks gives you a pass, you know the content. Okay. If the marks in the 3 hours gives you a pass, then you know you're also okay with exam with time management. However, if you pass the entire paper, but the first 3 hours you didn't pass, then all you know is you know the content, It is just your exam technique and your time management, because you know the content and just bringing the content onto the paper or within the 3 hours, that is the problem. So then you need to find a way to actually manage that. So then it's not for you to go back and review all your work. You know the work. It is about how you speed the process up. So that is what you're going to be testing. So make sure you're right. You complete the entire paper. When I say complete the entire paper, I don't mean 100%. It is when you feel you are done. Okay, sometimes it's like 90% done. You feel you are done. Let's stop there and then mark your paper. Then you can see the various then you can see how much you know, and also if you're passing within time. So that is basically the whole idea. Is not just to write for 3 hours, because if you're just going to write for 3 hours, in most times you're not going to finish the entire paper. So then obviously you are missing out on all the other content that you can be testing yourself on. So that is why you finish the entire paper as far as possible. Okay, it's very, very useful. It's so that's what you need to do. That's one strategy. Remember, I'm only giving you strategies. Whether you implement it, that is up to you. Now, during the 3 hours, based on there's 2 things you need to do. Okay, and well, there's one thing you need to do, but it's based on 2 levels of research. Okay, so the one is proper research. The other one is by the way research. Okay. So when I say by the way, it's not like a proper research investigation, like you would like a proper research thing. So the first one, which is the proper research, I think it was in America, where they did a study and where they confirmed that it's better to stop a question when its time is up and move on to a new question, as opposed to continuing working on the question because you think you know the question and you can get 100% for that question. What they found is that the fact that a person is taking too long on a question, as you're going towards the end of the question, the marks per minute that you are getting is slowing down because you have already kind of exhausted as much as you know in the question. So let's say a question says 50 minutes, but you think, oh, I still need, I just need 5 more minutes and I'm going to finish the entire question. Rather stop at 50 minutes, the time that is allocated to the question, and move on to the next question. Because that 5 minutes that you're spending on the current question, you're not going to get as many marks as you would be getting if you take that same 5 minutes and start the new question. Because the new question is fresh. So there's still, all the marks is still available. So the chance of you getting the easy marks and the marks you know already, you're going to score more marks for that 5 minutes as opposed to trying to finish the other question. So this is the proper research, okay? So train yourself. I know it's not easy for some people, but sometimes it's not about what you are used to. Sometimes you need to do what is to get you the outcome. So stop after your 50 minutes and move on to the new question, because the mark per minute that you're going to be getting is going to be much more than trying to finish. If you still have time, you can come back, but the chances are you most likely wouldn't be coming back. So just move on, okay? The second research, I call it the research, it's not really research, right? I can say it's an observation. So when I was a student, one of our lecturers gave us this advice, and this is more from a psych point of view, what they picked up when marking the psych ITC exams. But I'm pretty sure it will apply as well to a specific university as well. They found that most students that fail the ITC is because they never attempted every single question. There was a trend. It's not 100% foolproof, but it was a trend. People that never attempted every single question don't pass ITC. So the thing is, get to every question. The way you're going to get to every question supports the first research by stopping when time is up, moving on to the next question. And so the reasons for this is as follows. There's two reasons, right? The one reason is psycho exams, obviously a general exam, right? For the whole of South Africa, writing the exam. So the way UNISA does something is different to the way UCT does something, different to the way Stellenbosch does something, and so forth. So when the exams get released, the lecturers of the various universities also get the exam paper, and they are required to come up with a solution. Psycho then compiles all the solutions into one grand solution, okay? Obviously, the person that set the paper has a solution, but ultimately when the exam is written, the lecturers also write. Well, they don't write under time, and they can do it. They obviously don't have to write it immediately, but that's the first time they get access to the paper. Then they must come up with a solution for Psycho to come up with a grand solution, right? And it's in that process where they would identify if there was any problems, maybe for a particular university, or the time allocated was a little bit too, little, and so forth. So then what happens? Psycho makes adjustments to the marks. So students who attempted the question will benefit from the adjustment. Obviously, there's a way they'll adjust. Doesn't mean you only write one sentence, you get the full adjustment. But if you write nothing, you get no adjustment. So you don't benefit from it. So many students lose out on that. And that few adjustments could have actually made them pass had they gotten to that question. So that's the one thing. The second supports the other thing, that by going through every question, the time you're spending on every question is you're maximizing your time, because when you're starting the question, there's fresh marks available. So the whole idea is to get that fresh marks. So you're going to score more marks per minute. That is the idea. So try those two strategies. It will work if you implement it, but you need to train yourself to do that. Okay. So that is what you do. So you write for 3 hours in one column. After 3 hours, if you're still not done and you feel you're not yet done, continue till you're done, but in a different column. But within the 3 hours, do the strategy of only doing a question for the allocated time. Remember, you're practicing for the exam. So now you need to change a little bit how you would practice before. How you practice before is do the entire question as far as you, in its fullest, as far as you can, irrespective of time. Now, that was okay when you were learning the subject. Now you're no longer learning the subject, you're revising for the exam, you're practicing for the exam. So now the strategy changes. How you practice for the exam, how you're going to enter the exam, how you're going to write in the exam. So that's important. So to achieve this whole thing, you need to spend a maximum of 1 minute strategizing, planning out your paper. So when everybody is rushing into the paper, as soon as the question goes start, people run into the question. Now, that's not a great way of doing it. Taking 60 seconds to plan is going to be far more better than rushing immediately into just tackling the question paper. Don't want to spend 30 minutes planning. We don't saying that, but 60 seconds maximum would be good enough. What do you do in that 60 seconds? In that 60 seconds, just browse the required. Have a calculator, allocate the amount of time for each question. So remember, you just take the number of marks, multiply by 1.8, because every mark you need to spend 1.8 minutes. So which is 100 marks, 180 minutes. So therefore, you take, if question 1, for example, in this question is, let me just check, question 1 in this question 1 part A is, question 1 part A is 7 marks and 5 marks. You basically say 7 times 1.8, 5 times 1.8. That's how long you need to spend on that question. And then you just kind of need to move on, okay? So that is what you need to train yourself to do. So it must literally take 30 seconds to do that. And then just give a big picture overview of what the question is all about. Okay, so that is one thing of writing the exam. Now, what's going to require lots of effort from you you can't attempt this for the first time in the exam. So you need to practice now to do it. What you need to do when it comes to MAC 3, particularly to MAC 3701, but this applies to all subjects, okay? In your reading time, read the question from start to finish. Try to get a big picture overview. As you read, try to make some markings for whatever you want to do, okay? Whether it's a fixed cost, whether it's a variable cost, you know, certain information that you know will be useful for you. But try to get through the entire question to get a big picture overview. Then, if you then also try to read the required, okay? Because the way your exam is given is different to CTA. So in undergrad, you start by reading the required. Then you read the scenario. Because by you browsing the required, you'll get an understanding of you'll get an idea of the required, so that when you read the scenario, you can make some, already know, make some identify answers and so forth, okay? So take about whatever, to give you reading time, I think they give you like 15 minutes reading time. So use the reading time, try not to answer, try to just get as part of the planning, just get a big picture overview. So now when you browse the required and you went through the scenario, you have a big picture overview. Now you'll start on a particular required. So let's say you start question 1, part A. What you need to know that you must identify where in the scenario that question is sitting. So in many cases for MAC 3701, for a costing question, you look for 3 things. You look for the date, you look for whether they want budgeted or actual, and you look whether it's an annual, whether it's a year, whether it's a month, whether it's a quarter. That information will generally guide you where to find the information. Okay, so the generally like a heading that will match whether they want budget, the date, and so forth. So then that means you must concentrate the calculation on that part of the information. At least 95% of the marks for that question will come under that section. There may be other information scattered. That is why you need a big picture overview of the entire scenario, because there may be other information scattered elsewhere, but it won't be more than 5%. Generally like 1 mark or so that is required or something in the bigger scheme of the calculation. That is why you need a big picture. But remember, you focus in on that one section, and if you can't find something in that one section, it will be scattered somewhere in the general information of the question. So that must be aware of. One last thing. If you need something for a next question, but you couldn't determine it, make up something, okay? I just need to be reasonable. So you kind of need to know what is reasonable. So make up. Don't get stuck on trying to find it. Make it up and move on. You're going to lose the mark in where you needed to calculate it, but as you carry it through, you will be okay. Okay, so just make sure on that. Make sure you get through every question. Now, this is the last thing that you need to practice, that you have to train yourself on it. So you must constantly train yourself so that your brain knows it can do it. You don't want to do it consciously, well, kind of consciously, but it must come basically subconsciously. So it must come automatically. When you read the, on the exam question paper, they'll tell you how many questions there are. So in most cases, it'll be 1 or 2 questions, and then they'll tell you what subjects are being. So you have a view of what the subjects are, or the topics being tested. When you get to a particular question, when you read a required, you must be able to pick up which topic you are falling within. And then automatically, your brain must push out and must trigger all the various principles and the issues or the concepts within that topic. Now, it's not going to happen automatically now. You must train yourself to think that way. So you spend some time now when you in your revision. Let's say say we cover 3 papers. In the first 2 papers, you must spend some time when you read a topic, when you read a required, pick up what is the topic. You're training, and you tell your brain, I'm training you to pick up this topic. And then you spend like just about 5 minutes to train your brain, and you tell your brain you're training it to pick up the concepts of this topic, so that as you move on, automatically it's going to come. So that when you read, as you're reading the required, your brain is automatically identifying the topic. And because it knows when it identifies a topic, it must trigger the various concepts, issues, and principles of that topic, it's going to do that. So you must tell your brain you're training it to do that. So it's not going to come immediately. You need to practice to do it. So if you're going to try it in the exam, you're not going to finish the exam, because you're going to have to sit down and think where you want it to come automatically. It may sound far-fetched, but if you read basic neuroscience on how the brain works, how the mind works, how the conscious mind, the subconscious mind work, how the short-term, long-term memory works, you will see I'm not talking nonsense. So so that is something you need to do. So I'm giving you strategies. I unfortunately can't implement the strategy for you. You have to do the strategy. So so attempt it, try it. And just one thing, you need to think deeply, but you must not overthink. If you're going to think deeply, you're going to do well. If you're going to overthink, you're going to create chaos. You don't want to get into the chaos section. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, so let's move on. So now we can go on to the scenario. So that exam strategy, that exam strategies is going to help you. It's going to be useful. Okay, it's not just what I attempted myself, but I kind of attempted from understanding what my peers and my friends used to do. They were much, they did way better, you know, so you kind of learn from what they did. And when I observed, when you looked, I closely used to observe the top 5 students, and that or those that I knew within the top 20, and I saw what they do. I attempted as far as I could, so I wasn't the most diligent student. I did what worked for me, and in as little time as possible. And whatever I did, what they did, it works. So you need to, if you trust the process, it just takes a bit of time to get going. Once it's there, it is there. So attempt it, but remember, you need to do one question paper that is fully within an exam, one full question paper, fully with an exam. But remember, the whole process from now needs to be practicing for exam, but at least keep one that is basically your grand paper that is going to be like, you basically, it's as if you're writing the final exam, meaning you're done with your preparation, you're done doing the groundwork, you are now writing the final exam. So keep one full paper that you have never touched, keep it one side, and use that as your grand paper before the actual final exam. Okay, so now we're going to get into the scenario. I don't see it. Okay. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to do question 1. There's how many pages? There's 1, 2. Okay, so at least it's not a long scenario. So oh, sure, it is a long scenario. Okay. So here you can see there's 2 question papers. There's optimization, there's process costing, direct and absorption costing, planning and controlling inventory, and then devisualization. Okay, so those are the topics. Devisualization, basically one of 2 things. either performance management or transfer pricing, planning and controlling inventory, it's like budgeting and so forth. And then we would have optimization, which is where there's a limiting factor. So you maybe have 3 products, but you can't produce all 3 products because there's some limiting factor. Process costing, some costing thing. Okay, we know direct and absorption costing. That is which is basically your costing systems. So we're going to read the required first, and then we're going to read the scenario. So you're going to do a high-level overview of this. I'll read it a little bit more in detail, but for you must be a high-level overview of the required, and then go read the scenario on a high level, on a big picture view, and then you come back to part A, read it in more detail, and find it within the scenario. So let's say for each question below, remember to do the following: clearly show all your workings. Where necessary, indicate irrelevant amounts adjustments with a null value. Remember, in cost accounting, very important, you get marks for that. Round off all workings to 2 decimals except where otherwise stated. Ignore all taxation implications. So they say assist Miss Poppy Smith by calculating whether EB will be able to manufacture the required budgeted number of CC and CM biscuits for the month of November 2018. So there you can see already what I talk about, the 3 aspects. They're asking you for budgeted, right? So you're not using budgeted figures for the month, not a year, not a quarter, for a month of November 2018. So most likely somewhere in the scenario, there will be budgeted information for the month of November 2018. So you might just look out for that. So they say calculate whether they'll have a required number, okay? Then they say calculating the budgeted monthly optimum manufacturing mix for EB for the month of November 2018. There's an optimum mix, so that is where the optimization comes in. They say prepare MB's actual quantity statement for October 2018. So they want actual quantity statement. So there's actual information for October 2018. If they just say October 2018, it means for the month of October 2018. So now you're going to look for information under October 20, actual October 2018. They say based on your answer in B, calculate MB's equivalent costs per unit for October 2018. This is basically process costing. Okay, so part 3 is process costing. Part C, sorry. Then they say in number D, using your calculation in B and C, prepare MB's statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income for the month of October 2018. Okay, so using B and C, statement of profit, loss, and other comprehensive income for the month of October 2018. So they never said actual or budget. So most likely October is probably actual, because I said using B and C, and B is using actual information. C is using B, which means also actual information. So just take a note of that. There was something I wanted to make mention, just slipped my mind. Oh, that's what I want to make mention. As you can see, that C requires B, D requires B and C. So you may need to spend a little bit more time to get the answer if you don't do it within time, but you don't want to spend too much time, like maybe just 1 or 2 minutes extra. But if you know you're not going to get it within 1 or 2 minutes, then make up a number to carry forward. Okay, so you just make up a number to carry forward, but you need something for B, you need something for C, and you need something for D. Without part B and C, you can't do D. Without part B, you can't do C. So you're going to have to make, if you don't have it, if you can't get it quickly enough, you're going to have to make up a number, otherwise you're going to lose too many marks. Okay, so they say with the imminent retirement of Ms. Ugogo Baker, briefly explain to her 2 daughters 5 benefits of divisionalizing the 2 bakeries, with each daughter independently managing 1 bakery. Okay. Then they say, if recommend to UB whether or not the special offer from Newmill should be accepted. Support your recommendation with the appropriate and relevant calculations. Okay, so this is relevant costing basically. Okay, so special orders is the principles of relevant costing. So we have a view of what is required. Okay, so let's move on to attempt the question. So they say Ugogo Baker, UB, has for many years manufactured its own well-known brand of a savory cheese biscuit and various sweet biscuits exclusively to the retail consumer market. Okay, so a cheese biscuit and various sweet biscuits. Okay, so that may be the type of biscuits that they sell. The savory cheese biscuit manufacturing takes place at the UB bakery, at UB's Middleburg Bakery, MB, and the sweet biscuits are manufactured at its Imali Bakery, EB. So as you can see, you must have this picture in your head now. You have UB, which is the big company. Then below UB, you have MB and EB. Okay, MB manufactures the cheese biscuit and EB manufactures the sweet biscuit. Okay, so it's very important in costing to identify the products. And then once you identify the product, you must look out what constitute 1 unit of a product. Okay, so you need to look out for that. But as you read through the scenario, they'll probably mention it somewhere, but very important to identify your products and then to identify what constitute 1 unit of a product. So they say Miss Ugogo Baker is the founder, owner, and the manager of UB. She is planning to retire in 2020, and as part of the succession plan, she is training her 2 daughters, Miss Rosary Baker and Miss Poppy Smith, to eventually take over the business. Miss Ugogo Baker has therefore appointed her 2 daughters as managers of the respective bakeries. Okay, so that's just an idea. So just big picture, know what's happening over there. UB's financial year end is 30th November, and it operates for all 12 months of the year. The company uses the first in, first out method of inventory valuation and prepares the management accounts based on the absorption costing system. So when you see absorption costing system, you must remind yourself that there are two systems. You have the variable costing system or the direct costing system, and you have the absorption costing system. This plays a role in how you determine the cost of a product. The costing system determines how you calculate, how you determine the cost of a product. Remember, in general, a cost of a product is made up of 3 things: direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads. Direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads. Manufacturing overheads is split into 2, variable and fixed. Now, the variable costing system or the direct costing system includes direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overheads, but which manufacturing overheads? Only variable manufacturing overheads. Whereas the absorption costing system also have direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads, but in this case, the manufacturing overheads are both variable and fixed. So the difference between the 2 systems is the treatment of fixed manufacturing overheads. Under the absorption costing system, fixed manufacturing overheads, under the absorption costing system, fixed manufacturing overheads is included in the cost of a product, whereas under the variable manufacturing system or the direct costing system, fixed manufacturing overheads is expensed in the year it is incurred. Okay, it is not included in the cost of a product. So just be aware of that. Okay, so number one, EB. Okay, so EB manufactures two types of sweet biscuits, chocolate chip and chocolate mint, packed into 200-gram packets. One 200-gram packet equals 1 unit. Okay, so there you get it. Now the picture becomes bigger. So remember the initial picture in our mind on your drawing is you have UB as the company. Under UB, you have MB that does the cheese biscuit, and you have EB that does the sweet biscuit. But now we know EB have two sweet biscuits, a chocolate chip CC and a chocolate mint CM. And then make a note for yourself that each 1 unit is equal to 200 grams. Okay, so that's important. They say the base dough of these two biscuits is similar, with only the quantity of chocolate, the baking time, and the flavoring being the main differences. So the dough is similar, but there are 3 differences: the quantity of chocolate, the baking time, and the flavoring. Okay, so those are the 3 things. Now they say Miss Poppy has provided the following budgeted information for the month of November 2018. Remember, we saw already that we're looking for budgeted November 2018 for the month of November 2018. So here we know we're under this section. So we know this section will help us in part A. They say an extract of the standards per unit. What is 1 unit? 200 grams. Okay, so an extract per unit reflects the following. So we have notes, we have CC, and we have CM. They're giving us the sales price. Then they're giving us prime costs. Okay, so what you must know, prime cost is direct material and direct labor. Okay, take a note for yourself. They could give you another term called conversion costs. Conversion costs is equal to direct labor plus overheads. Okay, so prime cost is equal to direct material plus direct labor, whereas conversion cost is equal to direct labor plus overheads, okay, manufacturing overheads, whichever is applicable, okay. So why this is important, although when you see the cost of a product, you must always remind yourself that the cost of a product is direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overheads. Manufacturing overheads is fixed and variable, and it depends which costing system. The costing system will indicate which of those manufacturing overheads are included. Now, although you have that skeleton in your mind of the cost of a product, remember they can present it in different ways. So, for example, they can give you variable manufacturing costs. Variable manufacturing costs is basically direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. Okay, so that means there's no need then to split up into the direct material, direct labor, and so forth. Similarly, over here, there's no need to split direct material and direct labor because they gave it to us as one thing called prime cost. So remember, the skeleton is as I explained, but it does not mean it's always going to fit that. You must see how that skeleton fits based on the information provided. So in this case, we won't have direct material and direct labor separately. It is combined in the line item called prime cost. But always remind yourself, what is the cost of a product? Okay, and then there you have variable manufacturing overheads, and then we have fixed manufacturing overheads. They say, look at note 1.3. And then we have variable selling costs. So you must distinguish between manufacturing costs and non-manufacturing costs. So prime costs, variable manufacturing overheads, fixed manufacturing overheads, those are manufacturing costs. Variable selling costs is a non-manufacturing cost. we don't include non-manufacturing costs in the cost of a product. Only manufacturing costs are included in the cost of a product. So let's say November's budgeted manufacturing and sales demand for CC and CM are 3,000 units and 2,800 units respectively. So what you pick up for November, production as well as sales, okay, are the same. Okay, so budgeted manufacturing and sales. So production units as well as the sales units budgeted are the same for both. 1.3. Fixed manufacturing overheads are absorbed based on the budgeted oven baking time of each product. The budgeted fixed manufacturing overhead absorption rate determined at the beginning of the financial year, representing a normal month, is 12 Rand per hour. Okay, so just to give you some context, because this thing of fixed manufacturing overheads is very important. You need to know the two formulas so you can be able to, whatever is given, you'll be able to manipulate the formula to get what you want. In many cases, they're going to require you to manipulate the fixed manufacturing overheads formula. So I'm just going to open up Google quickly. So just to show you. Okay, it's not necessarily required for the question, but just to give you an idea. So when you see this, because they may require it from you. So I'm doing this on Google Drive. I'll give you access at the end of this lesson. I'll give you access to the drive, and then you'll be able to find the Google Sheets there. Okay, so I'll access immediately to it once I add it to the group, once I add it to the folder. So let me just share it quickly with you. Share the screen. Oh, you can see the screen, right? Yeah. So just as a by the way, okay. So remember, you have two costing systems. You have the direct costing system and you have the absorption costing system. The difference between the two costing systems is that the absorption costing system includes fixed manufacturing overheads in the cost of a product, where the direct costing system does not. Now, the absorption costing system is split into two. You have the absorption costing system where fixed manufacturing overheads are determined using the traditional costing method. And then you have the absorption costing system where fixed manufacturing overheads is determined using the activity-based costing system, ABC. Now, if they don't mention ABC, then we're using the traditional costing method. So in this case, we're using the absorption costing system with where fixed manufacturing overheads are allocated or determined using the traditional costing method. Now, there are two formulas that is needed to work out fixed manufacturing overheads, okay? So the fixed manufacturing overheads that is included in the cost of a product is known as your fixed manufacturing fixed overheads applied, okay? So the fixed overheads that is allocated to the cost of a product is known as your fixed overheads applied. The way you get your fixed overheads applied is by saying fixed overheads applied equals fixed overhead rate, and also known as your predetermined rate or your predetermined overhead rate, or another term like I use in this question, the absorption rate, okay? Multiplied by actual activity. Okay, generally you will use actual activity. Sometimes you just use activity. What is activity? Activity is refers to the basis of allocation, how you're allocating overheads, the base you are using to allocate overheads. So the term activity refers to the basis that you are using to allocate overheads. In this case, which base are we using? We're using oven time. Okay, that's basically known as machine hours. Okay, so just take note of that. Your activity refers to the basis of allocation. In this case, it is oven time. So you get two bases. You get an input, you get an output. If it is units produced, then it is an output. If it is direct labor hours, machine hours, direct labor costs, material costs, anything that is an input into the production process, then that is called an input. So in this case, oven time is something that is something used within the production process. So that is an input. While it's important to distinguish between an input and an output, it's going to become critical when you come to standard costing. Not critical over here. All you need to know over here is what is the basis of allocation. In this case, it is oven time. So activity refers to oven time. So fixed overheads applied is fixed overhead rate multiplied by actual activity, meaning multiplied by oven time. Okay, so why that's important? In 1.3, they gave us the sorry, not in 1.3, in the table where they gave us the fixed manufacturing overheads. They're telling us what was the fixed overhead applied. So for CC, it was 4 Rand 20, whereas for CM, it is 3 Rand 60. Okay, so fixed overheads applied for CM is 4 Rand 20. For CC is 4 Rand 20. For CM, it was what, 3 Rand 60. So we know fixed overheads applied. In 1.3, they told us the absorption rate. Remember, absorption rate, fixed overhead rate, predetermined overhead rate, predetermined is the same thing, right? So they gave it us as 12. So that means we can work out the activity. It's not going to be actual activity, it's going to be budgeted activity that we can work out, meaning we'll be able to work out the oven time that is being used. So they said it's 12 Rand per hour. So the activity we'll be able to determine is the number of hours. You can already see it's 12 Rand per hour. So each unit takes less than 1 hour, okay, because it is 4 Rand 20 and 3 Rand 60. So just be aware of that, okay. In order to determine the fixed overhead rate, we don't have to in this case, but just in case you need to, fixed overhead rate is always calculated as follows. Okay, so budgeted costs divided by budgeted activity. So it must be total budgeted costs for all products, okay, divided by total budgeted activity for all products. In this case, it would be total oven time for both products. Okay, so just be aware of that. We don't need to calculate it because we have the fixed overhead rate of 12 Rand. But the way they got 12 Rand was, remember they told you, they determine at the beginning of the year. An overhead rate will be determined at the beginning of the period, whichever the period is. For our purposes, for an academic purposes, in most cases, the period is 1 year. In the real world, they'll probably do it on a quarterly basis. So the fixed overhead rate is 12 Rand. How did they get it? They said budgeted costs. And remember, we're working the fixed overhead rate. So it's budgeted fixed costs divided by budgeted activity. And remember, it's fixed. This fixed cost is the fixed manufacturing cost. So to make it clear, I'll just going to say here, fixed manufacturing costs. Okay, so the fixed overhead rate is budgeted fixed manufacturing costs divided by budgeted activity. Just in case we need to do it later in the question, we will be able to most likely calculate one of these numbers. But remember, the fixed overhead rate, it was the fixed overhead applied for each product was given 420, 360. We know the overhead rate, 12 Rand. So that means you are able to determine the activity, not necessarily actual, but budgeted, because the information given is budgeted. We'll be able to determine the budgeted activity, meaning we'll be able to determine how much time, how much oven time did they budget each unit of CC and CM to take. Okay, and this is in hours. It's going to be less than 1 hour because it's 12 Rand per hour, and each unit is using less than 12 Rand. Okay, so just be aware of that. So if you want to see it in action, we'll do it like this. Details, CC, CM. Okay, so if I want to rearrange this equation, the equation, so fixed overheads, we want actual activity, right? So if I say activity, I'm going to take the word actual out for now. You just leave it as activity, so it's not confusing. So activity, which is oven time, activity, oven time equals fixed overhead, that stays there, yeah. Okay, so it will be fixed overhead applied divided by fixed overhead rate. Okay, so if we want activity over here, if we want, so we have fixed overhead applied, we have fixed overhead rate. Okay, so activity, oven time in hours, so this one was 4 and 20. You can just check I'm putting in the right numbers. That was 4 and 20. That was 3 and 60. This is 12 Rand and 12 Rand. So the oven time would be 4 and 20 divided by 12 Rand. So 35, 35 minutes, I guess. And then 30 minutes. No, that's not 30 minutes. So that is 0.35 hours. That is 0.3 hours. Okay. Okay. So 0.35 hours and 0.3 hours per unit. Okay, so we want to keep it in hours because the cost is in hours. Okay, so just be aware of that. So now I'm going to go back. I just wanted to show you that. With manufacturing overhead is a key thing. This will generally be tested quite often, if not all the time. Okay, so I mean, if not in every question paper. So this is a key thing in cost accounting. So make sure you are able to manipulate those formulas to get what you want. Okay, so here we say based on oven baking time. In effect, think of it like machine hours, okay? So 1.4, Ms. Poppy is extremely concerned about November's manufacturing because 2 of the 12 baking ovens broke down and must be repaired. So 2 of the 12 ovens broke down, okay? The repairer is still waiting for the necessary replacement parts before he can continue with the repairs. He has indicated that the 2 ovens will be out of service for 5 working days each. Each baking oven normally operates for 22 working days in a month and 7 hours per day. So that means we will be able to work out the total number of baking time that we will have for November, given the constraint. The constraint is that 2 is out of order for 5 days. Okay. So basically, there are 12 ovens. So 12 ovens. 10 ovens will operate for 22 days at 7 hours per day, and then 2 of the ovens will operate for 22 less 5 days times 7 hours per day. Okay, so that will give you the total baking, the total capacity, and then we will be able to work out from there. Okay, we will come back to middle bidder. Let's go to the required. So you can see part A dealt with EB. We will read MB afterwards to deal with B, C, and D. Okay, so if you have a look at Ms. Poppy, they say calculate whether EB will be able to manufacture the required budgeted number of CC biscuits for the month of November. So you know that the problem lies in capacity over here. They need to produce 3,000 and 2,800 of each product. Each product uses a certain number of hours. So you know what is the required. Now you need to know what is available. Okay, so let's work out. So if I go to the scenario now, so I'm just going to so this is question 1. So question A asked you, dear student, please calculate whether they were able to manufacture the required number of units. You saw there's a constraint, so you basically need to work out what you require, and you need to work out what is the capacity given the constraint. Okay, so in part A, we can work out what is the available capacity given the constraint. So available capacity, and we can work out required capacity. Okay, and then we can see whether there's a surplus or a shortfall. You should see Excel, right, or Google Sheets. If you don't, just tell me. Surplus or a shortfall. Okay. Now we can do the workings for it. So the workings for it is as follows. Let's do that. So working 1. So what is required, right? So we have details. We have details. We have CC, and we have CM. Okay. So budgeted manufacturing units or production units. Production units. We know we're busy with actual, so it's fine. I mean, we know we're busy with budget. So production units. It was just, help me if I'm putting the wrong numbers, 3,000, 2,800. Okay. Then we're going to say oven time per unit. Now we already calculated that. So I'll bring it in working 2. I'll just go fetch it over here. So I'm going to leave it here still for you to come back if you want to see how we got it. But I'm not going to explain it now because we know what we did over there. So there we have the oven time. So it is 0.35 and that. I will tell them I got it from working 2. So this will give me required time. Okay, so required oven time is 3,000 units multiplied by 0.35 hours per unit. So That's the number of hours required. Okay, so let me just do that. So the total is as follows. So that's the total required time. Now I must work out capacity. Okay, so total required time is 1890. Okay, so we can tell them working 1. Now for working 3, we must work out available capacity. So remember, so we have 10 ovens. Okay, let me just do this. You can work out however you want to, whatever makes sense to you. Okay, I'm just gonna do it in a manner that I think makes sense. So we're gonna say number of ovens. Okay, days available. Okay, hours per day. Hours per day. Okay, so it'll give me available oven time. So this will give me oven time. So number of days they available for the full number of ovens. It is 10 ovens that is available for the full 22 days for 7 hours per day. This one over here, there's only 2 ovens that is under constraint. They're available for 22 minus 5 days, because 5 days are out of order, and there's still 7 hours available. So if we do 10 multiplied by 22 days, multiplied by 7, so if we add up, there's a shortfall, okay? So there's a shortfall. Available capacity minus required capacity, we're short by 112 hours. Okay, so we're short by 112 hours. We must answer the question. What is the question saying? The question is saying, calculate whether we're able to manufacture the budgeted. No, so there's a shortfall. So we're telling them there's a shortfall. Okay, so that's part A. Now we can do part B. So for part B, what do they want? Part B is asking you for the optimized number of products. Okay, so which product must you produce first? So when you want to work on optimization, so this one is a little bit easy because there's only 2 products. Okay, when there's more than 2 products, it's a little bit more complex. But the way you work it out is by basically you need to work out a contribution margin per limiting factor. So we work out the contribution margin per limiting factor. To get the contribution margin per limiting factor, we basically get the contribution margin per unit. We identify what is the limiting factor. I mean, no, oven time is the limiting factor. That will give us contribution margin per unit, per limiting factor. The one with the highest limiting factor, that will be ranked number 1. So mean that you will produce first, and then you will produce the other one afterwards. Okay, so basically we'll do as follows. So we'll have details, we will have CC, we will have CM, we have sales, we have prime costs, we have variable manufacturing overheads. Remember, we're working on contribution margin. Contribution margin is sales minus total variable costs. So your total variable cost includes both manufacturing variable costs as well as non-manufacturing variable costs. Now remember, there was a variable selling price, I think, selling cost. Let me just check. There was a variable. Yeah, so you see there's a variable selling cost. So we must bring that also in because we're working at contribution margin. Contribution margin is sales minus total variable cost. Total variable cost, manufacturing as well as non-manufacturing. So now we're going to say variable selling costs. Okay. So this will give us contribution margin. This will give us contribution margin per unit. Okay, so can someone maybe help me with the pricing? So it is 40 and 35. What is the prime cost for CC? Prime cost is 2175, 1790, 2175, 1790. Then we have variable manufacturing overheads, which is 4 and 4,